second part of the round 2 Pickems, and as you can see in the 1-0 matches, I went 1-1. I'm really happy though that Lev made it on in versus NRG. Really happy. I really like Lev, and yeah, so glad they made it on in. So now let's take a look at the 0-1 matches, and first up we're gonna take a look at DRG versus XLG. And so for XLG versus DRG, there's a bit of an interesting situation because thus far XLG have had a permaban in Ascent, and even though they showed some amount of willingness to pick it or to at least let it float in the opening match, and the same being said about DRG for Fracture, it's still a bit questionable about how willing they actually are to pick these maps or to actually play on these maps. And so when it comes to XIG, I've gone with them still banning Ascent because the one time DRG has played it, they look quite good on that map. And I don't really think that there's a huge flaw, like that they really have another terrible map versus DRG that they should ban, right? With Pearl being their worst map, it also not being a great map for DRG. I think the XLG are gonna be so fine to just float Pearl and instead ban out Ascent. And then for DRG, I've gone with them floating Fracture and banning Lotus instead, since yeah, Lotus is by far XLG's best map, and it's not a great map for DRG, even though they've played it a ton. I think we've seen in their match, in XLG's match versus NRG as well, even though they lost the match on Lotus, it still showed that their comp is really good on Lotus, and I don't think DRG would have a good time to play XLG on that map. But I would also understand it if DRG would ban Split instead of Lotus. And kind of regardless, I think XIG are gonna pick the other map, in this case Split, and I think XIG are gonna win regardless. And then for DRG, I've gone with them picking Haven. Obviously, if XIG doesn't ban Ascent, it's likely that DRG are gonna pick it. But Haven is probably their best map, and yeah, I think DRG would win on that map versus XIG. And then in the second rotation of map bans, I've gone with DRG getting rid of Fracture. I don't think that they would be willing to have that be the decider, but I would be so happy if they prove me wrong in this. And then for XIG, I've gone with them banning Pearl, just because it's not a good map for them, so they would have a much better time on Breeze or Fracture. And in that case, Breeze would be the remaining map, and I see XIG as favorites on that map. Yeah, I don't think it would be a particularly close map, and for DRG probably Fracture is gonna be closer if they have some prep on that map. But yeah, I've gone with it being Breeze, but regardless, I think it's gonna be a 2-1 for XLG. And so we're gonna lock that one in, and then next up we're gonna look at Global Esports versus Full Sense. And so for GE versus Full Sense, I was really uncertain on how I would go about these both map bans as well as map picks. I think for GE it was a bit easier. I think they ban either Lotus or Split, and I think Full Sense are gonna pick whichever remains of the two. Like both aren't necessarily their worst maps, but it's clearly the maps where they have the highest probability to lose on versus Full Sense, I would say. And yeah, even though their Fracture and their Ascent are probably both worse, or at least we haven't seen as much, I think they should ban either Lotus or Split, and the whichever of the two ends up not being banned, I think Full Sense are gonna pick, and I think Full Sense are gonna win. And then for Full Sense map pick, map ban, I think Haven would be their best since it's probably their worst map out of the ones that we've seen. Um, Maybe Fracture also has looked equally bad, but Fracture is a worse map for GE. So because of that, I think they should float it. And I think Ascent, even though it's been a map that they haven't played thus far, GE has only played it once and lost. So they should also float that map, in my opinion. And yeah, I think Pearl, you could make the argument that they should ban it just because GE is that good on that map, but Full Sets themselves are still good on that map. So I think it would be weird to ban it for Full Sense, and I still think they have a better shot on Pearl than they have on Haven probably. But nevertheless, I think GE are gonna win on Pearl. Then for the second rotation of map bans, I was really uncertain on how to go about this. I've gone with Full Sense banning Breeze, which yeah, I wasn't that I wasn't that confident in this being a great ban. I just think this is clearly GE's best map out of the remaining ones, so that's why they should get rid of it. With the other two maps, Full Sense GE hasn't looked great on it, and they haven't had a lot of experience on that map. So Full Sense probably have a better shot on either of these two. And then I've gone with GE banning Ascent. It could also be that they end up banning Fracture. I really couldn't tell you. Regardless of which of these two it ends up being, I think it's gonna be a 50-50. And it might be that GE is slightly favored. I would say overall GE maybe come in as slight favorites into this matchup, like a very slight, like a 50, not even 55-45, like a 52-48 maybe. But yeah, I think the last map, in my opinion, was kind of a 50-50, and I think Full Sense just looked worse in their opening match than they are gonna look versus GE. I think they'll be more confident versus GE just because they've played that team more. They know that team from Pacific, so that's my reasoning behind picking Full Sense. I think that they're gonna play with more confidence, still be more used to the stage. So yeah, I hope Full Sense will look better in this match than they did in the opening match versus Foot, where they looked quite bad, to be fair. So yeah, I hope Full Sense can improve, and I've gone for a 2-1 for Full Sense. And so I'm gonna add that one in, and I'm gonna save. I really don't feel great about picking Full Sense over GE. I hope Full Sense will look better, but we'll see. And as always, let me know what you guys think. Who do you have winning in these two matches? And then we'll see each other tomorrow for the one-on-one matches.